Hi, welcome to this session on how to structure. Well, it's called how to brainstorm, but I'm actually going to also weave in how to structure a personal statement in about 45 minutes. And my name's Ethan. I'm the college essay guy, and I spend a whole lot of time thinking about this. And I want to give you some practical tools that you can use, whether you're a student, a parent, counselor. It looks like when I look at the poll here, like 60% of you are students, 26% of you are parents, and 12% of you are counselors. Cool. So these are going to be useful no matter who you are. And I'm also curious because there are a whole bunch of students on here. Well, let me first of all share the check-in question. So the check-in question that I've put into the chat is, how do you identify? And I identify in a whole bunch of different ways, whether it's like I am a basketball player. I'm picking some identities that I haven't named recently. I am a husband. I am a casual sports fan, I would say, etc. So what are some different ways that you identify? Third culture kid is another way I identify. Thanks, Carmen, for that. So I'm going to read some of these from the chat. We have Star Trek fan. We have eternal optimist, who believes everything happens for a reason. Immigrant, pianist, actor, creative person eager to learn. Beautiful. South African immigrant, lovely. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes, this identities exercise. But let me share with you what we're up to today. So I'm going to start with some simple exercises that you can use to brainstorm a personal statement. And if you're a student who's on this session right now, I'd love to hear, where are you in your personal statement process? Are you like already have drafts written? Are you just getting started? Like, give me a sense of that. Name it in the chat, because then I'll be able to sort of tailor this best to you. And I'm going to share some practical exercises that I want you to actually do. And if you're a counselor or a parent, I also want you to actually do these, because I think they're pretty cool. Because then I think it'll be easier to share these with your student or your child. And I think it also helps to understand how it works from the inside. So these will be pretty practical and geared towards stuff that's going to like create ideas. And if you're a student taking this, do these exercises, because in the next 45 minutes, you could have an awesome idea for a personal statement. So as I'm reading the chat, just getting started, one draft, getting started. Okay, cool. You're in the right place. I'm going to treat this as if you're just getting started in this, and that's what we put in the title anyway, so that works out. All right. So here's my slide deck, because I do, and for some reason, this platform cuts off the bottom. If there's anything important at the bottom, I promise that I'll read it. Here's some quick facts about me if you're interested. I attended Northwestern, went to graduate school. I've been to 17th grade. I've written a couple books on this. I've been doing this pretty consistently since 2003. I took that break for grad school. Started a blog in 2015 called College Essay Guy. We found out just recently, we've had over 35 million page visits, which is pretty cool. I'm a missionary kid, former third culture kid, and I'm not a bad free throw shooter. Sorry, I just did the total thing where you're not supposed to do, where you actually read the slides. I promise not to do that anymore. Okay, let's jump right into the first exercise. So again, whether you're a parent, counselor, like, don't tune out and be like, oh, he's doing the student part now, I don't want to pay attention to this. Like, please stay with me. In fact, I want everybody to like close the other tabs, like maybe literally, or at least like minimize the windows. Because this is a really cool exercise that is also really fun at parties. And it's a great way to get to know folks. So the first exercise is, and I'm going to set a little timer for this. I have a timer behind the scenes here. I'm going to set a 1-minute timer. And the way this first exercise works is I literally just want you to make a list of things that you love. So this is what this looks like. I'm only going to do that for half a minute. My name's Ethan, and I love this pineapple spindrift that I'm drinking. I love that I'm like appropriately caffeinated right now. I love the color blue that just appeared when I closed my eyes. I love deep silences. I love the smell of the forest and the rain. I love the weird way that my voice just went up like that. I love like lying my chest on lying my head on someone's chest and like feeling the vibrations when someone talks. I love deep breaths. I love mishearing things in a funny way. I love puns. I love Thai food. etc. You get the idea. Okay, I want you to do it. I want you to spend a minute, and again, don't check out, oh, this isn't for me. Like, try this. Have fun with this. It's an improv game. For a minute, I want you to type a list of things that you love. And if you want to share in the chat, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But try this. 1 minute. Don't think about it too much. Make a list of things. If the word love for you is kind of hard because you're like, well, I only love 2 or 3 things, then just do like, I really like. Okay. 3, 2, 1, make a list, go. And again, feel free to share in the chat if you feel inspired. Okay, time's up. Pencils down. Again, feel free to share in the chat if you like. I enjoy reading and getting to know you a little bit. It'll also help other people think of stuff that they love, which will be useful for your college essay. You'll find out in a second how. Not a second, like 10 minutes. Okay, second exercise. I want you to make a list of things that you know a lot about. Okay, things that you can geek out on. So I could geek out on college admissions. I could geek out on facilitation techniques. I could geek out on board games. I could nerd out on I know. Let me use I know. I know a lot about how the voice, like I know a lot about accents. I know a lot about 90s movies because I worked in a video store, etc. So what are some things that you know a lot about? And if know a lot about is tricky for you because you're like, well, what do I know a lot? What defines a lot? Then just what are some things that you are a nerd for? That if you met somebody in a social situation and they also like this thing, you would get a little bit excited because you could talk about it with them in a way that you can't talk about with other people. Okay. So let's actually do a minute and a half for this one. What are some things that you know a lot about? Make a list, go. All right. Time's up. I'm going to relate this back to personal statements in a moment, I promise. But for now, if you want to share in the chat, feel free. Let's move on to the next one. Whoops. I'm trying to change the slide on the actual screen share. Next question. And this one will be optional to share in the chat or not. It's the question stem if you really knew me. So if I really knew you, what would I know about you? If you really knew me, Ethan, you would know that One of the things that I'm working on right now is presence, especially when it comes to like reading to my daughter at night. So one of the things I notice when I'm sometimes reading to her, Harry Potter, we're on book 5, is that I might get distracted. And so that's not what I want. I want to be able to focus with her. So I have this practice now where I'm just like, every time I get distracted, I'm like tapping my leg, tap my leg. So why am I sharing this with you? If you really knew me, you'd know that presence, especially with the people I love, is super duper important. And I beat myself up if I'm not present with folks. I'm like trying to be really present with you right now. And I think I'm actually doing okay. I think also what I'm learning about myself is I've been reading a little about ADHD, and I might have some mild ADHD. I'm like exploring that too. So that's like, I actually haven't shared that publicly, but that's something that I'm exploring as well. So I'm trying to be easier on myself. I also have a perfectionistic impulse in myself, as you can maybe tell. So those are some things about me. And what I did basically is I shared something, and then in order to let you know a little bit more about me, I shared what was the value, like why is that thing that I shared important? And here's a little resource for this. I have this thing, if you just Google values exercise, you'll see a list of values. So what I did, the value that I shared with you was presence. I said that's something that's really important to me. So here's the invitation. Again, we'll take just a minute to do this, but I want you to start with the sentence, if you really knew me, and then fill in the blank. What would I know about you? Again, super optional to share in the chat. You do not have to share. You can just keep this private to yourself. And then if you can, maybe connect it to a value. Like why? Why is this thing important to you? Whatever it is that you want to share. Okay. I'll click back and forth between these. Actually, let me just put this link in the chat so you can grab this if you want. So I'll set another 1 minute timer and we'll do this one. Okay. Now, any of these, by the way, if you want to spend a little more time on them later, I think it can be really good. Each one of these could lead to an interesting personal statement in case you didn't notice. Again, super optional to share in the chat if you'd like. The next exercise is something called the essence objects exercise. And the way it works is pretty simple. You basically imagine a box, and in it, you name objects that represent an important moment, a relationship, a quality of value. And for example, you'll see on my list my friendship bracelet from Veronica, who is my partner. Veronica makes a friendship bracelet for me. And to me, that's even more meaningful than the wedding ring that I'm wearing because it represents our commitment to our friendship, which I think is really important in a relationship, in a marriage. And she also, I'm not wearing it right now because it wore off. She makes one for me each year. So it's my birthday's in 3 weeks and I'm awaiting my new friendship bracelet. It's always a new color, kind of like our relationship. I also would put in there barbecue sauce because I love barbecue sauce. It reminds me of growing up in the South a little bit. It also represents like guilty pleasures. Like I've been like more focused on my health, but I still will like crush some barbecue sauce, maybe like on some fries from Popeyes or something like that. So it doesn't have to all be like serious, meaningful. It could just be kind of fun. So I want to take 3 minutes with this one. And I want you to think of what are some essence objects, which is to say objects that represent, like I said, deeper moments, memories. And if you want, in parentheses, you can connect to them to a value. So for a friendship bracelet from Veronica, I might put in parentheses connection, ritual, because this is like a ritual we have of like her tying it on my wrist, and barbecue sauce. I would write family or health. Okay, so just write down the values that it makes you think of. And we'll do this for 3 minutes. Cool. Time's up. All right. So part of why I love this exercise, well, these exercises, is I feel like there's some of the best ways. Let me stop sharing my screen for just a second. Hi. I feel like in order to write a great personal statement, you need some stuff to write about, and then you need a way to organize the stuff. So what colleges are looking for, if I had to distill it to like a couple sentences, is they want to know what are the skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're bringing to their campus. In other words, how will you contribute to their community? How will you be an awesome community member? Some of the stuff that we've just talked about, the check-in was around your different identities that you claim, or stuff that you love or know a lot about, or essence objects that connect to interesting different moments in your life. These kinds of questions start to, if you really knew me, start to basically conjure a list of potential things to write about. So what we need first is a bunch of stuff. And at the end of this session, I'll share with you a video where I've got a couple more different exercises like this, because I didn't want to go through all of them right here. But essentially, you need to spend, I would say, at least a good 45 minutes generating ideas. We're doing the short version because I want to give you some structural ideas. Once you have some stuff to write about, then we talk about, okay, how do you pick stuff and how do you organize it, which is what we're gonna talk about next. But what I want to say to you, for some of you who are just starting out, we've spent just like, 10, 15 minutes doing this. I would encourage you to keep doing this. And if there are others of you who are on this call who are like, I feel like I need to start over, or, I feel like I haven't found my topic yet, some of these questions could help you lead to that. Okay. So again, step one, stuff to write about. Okay. So this hopefully helps you generate that. And if you were to just go back and spend 15 minutes continuing to answer those questions, you would generate some more cool stuff. All right. Part two, though, is how do you tell your story and how do you pick an object or a thing or a topic? Now, some students have experienced incredible challenges and they're like, that's what I want to write about. But I find that many students, in fact, maybe I would argue most students, haven't faced challenges that they want to write about in their personal statement. So let me say this. I want to underscore this point. Even if you faced big challenges in your life, you do not have to write about them for your personal statement. In fact, there could be another topic that allows you to talk even more broadly about different sides of yourself. And still, you could find a way to weave in a mention of those challenges in your personal statement and not make it the main thing that you're writing about. And I'm going to share with you an example essay that does that really well in just a few minutes. So, but you will have to make a choice. Am I going to write about challenges or not? And if students are choosing to write about challenges, I call this a narrative structure. Narrative stories are the ones that we're familiar with from movies. Sorry, I know you can't read all this because I'm in the way. But a narrative is a cause and effect story oftentimes where it's like, this happened, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this. And it's often chronological, meaning that you're oftentimes writing about it in the order that the events happened. And I think it's a good structure if you're writing about challenge. But I want to devote a little extra time today to something called montage structure. A montage is basically connecting the stuff that you want to write about through a common theme or a common thread, if you will. And what that is, I'm going to give you some options for it in just a second. What the value of this can do is that it helps you to, like, in some cases, go more broad. So you're not defined by a particular challenge you face, for example. You're like, here are all these different sides of me. And I think it's really useful, especially for students who either haven't faced challenges or don't have that big challenge to write about, or who have faced challenges, but they're like, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be defined by that. I want to explore other options. So a little more on montage structure. It's a technique that you're really familiar with from movies. If you've seen the movie Up, it's that, 3 minutes when we see all of Carl and Ellie's story. You can see some images here, and we go through their entire life. Now, the theme of this, we could name it different things, but it's like Carl and Ellie's life, or we could call it love story. And essentially, because we can't choose all the moments and talk about every single instant, right? Because that would be a really long movie. We have to kind of select. And that's kind of what you're doing here if you choose this structure. It's condensing space and time, and you're choosing the sort of essential moments. And you're using a few images or moments to tell a much larger story. The purpose, as I mentioned, just so that you have it in writing, is to demonstrate skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring with you to a college campus. And this montage structure allows you to show lots of different sides of yourself. Why do this? Well, if you were to just randomly write, here's my life, and just kind of go all over the place, it could seem a little scattered all over the place. Instead, what this would involve is choosing a particular thing and connecting different things to that thing. In other words, you choose a thread, for example, metaphorically speaking, this is the theme, that connects all these different beads. And these beads represent different parts of yourself that you want to share. So as I mentioned, what we're generating first is stuff to write about, so these beads. And then step two is identifying, okay, what's a thread that could potentially connect these different sides of me? So those are the two things you need for an outstanding personal statement: stuff to write about, something to connect them all. So here's an essay, and I'll just spoil it and say that the theme of this essay is identities. So the exercise that I did at the beginning was, in part, I think, an inspiration for this essay. As we're reading this, what I want you to pay attention to is, I'm going to read it out loud to you. There are 4 things that I think are important to have in a personal statement. And write these down if you want, if you care. Core values, which we've explored a little bit together. Insight, which is where you learn something new. Vulnerability, which is like, does the essay actually feel personal? And craft, which is to say, is it well written? So I'm not going to read the whole essay. I'm actually going to read the first couple paragraphs, and then I'm going to fast forward to the end just for the sake of time, so we have time to look at another essay. Here's this essay. I am Mexican. The sound of frying empanadas and the smell of burning peppers. My mother calling me mi vida and my relatives kissing my cheek. Running but never hiding from the dreaded chancla and always responding with muy bien, ¿y tú? Childhood vacations to Puebla and Cancun, swimming in the ocean and playing in the sand, feeling the need to be good at cross country, feeling the need to be able to endure spicy. Those are all me. I want to just point out some really cool things that the student is doing in terms of craft. Notice that in terms of this student's Mexican identity, they're using all 5 senses to invite you in to like experience what does that identity look like to them. So like the sound of frying empanadas and the smell of burning peppers, boom, my mother calling me mi vida, another sound, my relatives kissing my cheek, so there's touch. So in these first 3 sentences, we've got, it's awakening our senses to like, what does it mean to this student to be Mexican? And the student says, those are all me. Notice also they're using fragments, which in this case is a stylistic choice. And some students will be, is that okay? And it's like, yeah, it is okay. As long as you know what you're doing. And this student seems to know what they're doing. It's well, organized. I'm Chinese. The utter preference for using chopsticks in every scenario and the unhealthy craving for rice with every meal. The sharing of every dish placed on the center turntable, hot pot for celebration, and tea eggs, of all things, as a favorite dish. My father's musical Cantonese conversations with my grandparents and their constant inquiry asking, how is school? Being named after the dragon for strength and living for 3 years in Shanghai. The constant pressure to get good grades. My father's desire for me to become a doctor. And the never-ending, how are you so bad at math? You're Asian. Those are all me. So what do you notice in this new paragraph? And there's a delay on the chat, so it'll take you a few seconds to hear me say that. But what do you notice now? I mean, here's a student who said, I'm Mexican, and has shared all these sides, these parts of what it means to be culturally Mexican, and then Chinese with these other sides of themselves. What does that do to your brain as you hear that? Notice it's personal. So in terms of vulnerability, this student feels pressure, constant inquiry from relatives asking, how's school? There's pressure to get good grades. Father wants them to become a doctor. And the never ending, how are you so bad at math? You're Asian. So there's like cultural stereotypes the student's experiencing and what we would call either microaggressions or just actual aggressions. What I like about this, and what I mentioned earlier, is that this student obviously has experienced some challenges, but these challenges don't define them. What do I mean? Clearly, this student could write a whole essay on my father's desire for me to become a doctor. And the whole essay could be about like, but I don't want to become a doctor. I want to be this instead. And like, that's mostly what we learn through the essay. But instead, we learn that this struggle is just one element of this student's Chinese identity, which is just one of several identities they experience, they identify with, they claim. Cool. I'm curious. Let's keep reading. We'll do one more paragraph. I'm American, a citizen with the freedom to vote, the freedom to speak my mind, and the representation by all the cultures and countries of the world, shopping sprees at Target, and a constant diet of fast foods, full acceptance of the consumer society, and a rather unhealthy addiction to social media and technology. Notice some vulnerability. Sometimes students feel like you have to like be a rock star and be amazing in every single sentence. Well, one thing that actually draws me to this student a little bit is the acknowledgement that there are goods and bads of identifying as American. And one of them, Target, pretty awesome, but also like, and this is not just American culture, but part of what being an American means to the student is having an addiction to social media. So it's kind of like acknowledging like, hey, I'm not perfect. Going to football games on Friday nights and watching Netflix on Saturday nights. Always watching my weight. Always looking at others. Always wishing. Always wanting for more. Those are all me. So notice there's like some personal stuff in here. And again, well, let me just say this. I'm not suggesting on this session that you need to like reveal your deepest, darkest secrets in order to get into college. That is not true. There are great essays written all the time that are not this vulnerable. This is kind of on the, like on the, I don't know, the vulnerability scale, 4 to, like a 1 to 10. I think for me, this is kind of in like the 7 to, as we'd see later, like 7 to 8 range. And I don't think you need to be this vulnerable to write a great personal statement. But I did want to bring it up in this session so that you ask yourself, is there a way that I could help the reader connect with me? Because when I read some of this stuff, I go, oh, that's, yeah, I kind of identify with that. Always watch my weight. Yeah, I pay attention to my weight too sometimes. But again, the whole essay isn't based on watching weight. Like it could have been this whole essay about this person's struggle with their weight, but instead it's like, look at all these ways that identify: Mexican, Chinese, American. You kind of see the structure here. So some of the things you're noticing, I'm just going to read in the chat. Insight into the observations. Yeah. The way that I would define insight is when we learn something new about the student that isn't necessarily going to be revealed elsewhere in the application. So I might read and see that the student's got an awesome GPA. Maybe they've taken a test and gotten a good score. But what do I learn beyond the numbers? I'm learning that this is a student who has multiple different ways that they identify culturally. Awesome. I'm learning something about their relationship to family, because notice family is mentioned so far in the paragraphs, and family is important to them, I'm assuming. What else am I learning about this student? I'm also naming some values, right? Family. Let's see, I'm learning about their relationship with their family. That's not always easy. It's sometimes complicated. I can relate to that. And then craft. One of you mentioned the repetition. Yeah. So that to me is evidence of craft. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes people call this voice. And what that sometimes manifests itself as is, for example, repeating a phrase like I'm X, I'm Y, I'm Z. Those are all me. It's kind of like a refrain that keeps coming back. And the structure of it is somewhat uncommon. You don't, normally your essays are going to have complete sentences. Sometimes students ask, and by the way, if you've got questions, please throw them in the chat. Sometimes students ask, can I use I? And it's absolutely fine to use I in your personal statement. In fact, I would encourage it. Okay, I'm going to fast forward through the next paragraph so we can get to another essay in just a minute. The student writes about their Catholic identity. Similar situation, lots of details, some struggles. I'm homosexual, talks about, what it's been like identifying as gay. And then the student says at the end, here are all the things that I love. Here are my names that I'm called. I am Chinese, American, Catholic, gay. I'm all this and more. Most of all, I'm me. My identity isn't a singular entity. It's a conglomeration of experiences, beliefs, origins. This is my identity. This is me. So the student didn't title this essay, This Is Me. I just title it so it's easier to refer to it. But notice how much we learn about them. There's so much. So come back to these qualities, values. I learned so much about what they care about in terms of family, in terms of doing well in school, even is obvious from this. I learn about their, connection to their friends. I learn about their struggles, even though we didn't go into depth with their religious identity. Insight. I get insights into all those things. Vulnerability, it's personal, and craft. It's got these nice. You can tell that the student has revised this over several drafts. Okay. So that's one way of writing your essay. And let me just share my face for just a second. What I'll say to you is that the exercises that we've just done that involve, for example, saying something that you love or know a lot about, or the identities that you claim, or essence objects, any of these could be a potential theme for a personal statement. And how does this work? Well, let me take a pen out. Do I have a piece of paper? I do have a piece of paper, but it's over here. I have to grab it. Excuse me 1 second. I should have had that ready. That's like the radio. That's like the equivalent of a radio silence on a radio thing. Okay. So what you can do is you can create a jellyfish to test your topic. So what do I mean by this? And what the heck is a jellyfish? This is a jellyfish. And how it works is basically you pick something from your I love or I know list. For example, games. And then you spend a couple minutes seeing how many different values you can connect it to. So I can connect games to listening, to social justice, because I've played certain games that have given me a deeper, more nuanced awareness of social justice and issues of power. I can connect games to family because I played a lot of games with my family when I was growing up, and now I play different games with my wife and daughter. Creativity, I love inventing new games. It's rare that I'll play it by the rules to learn it, but then I want to change the rules up if it's boring. So this tells me, once I do this jellyfish, that this might be an interesting essay topic for me, because I can connect to these things that I care a lot about: listening, social justice, family, creativity. These all happen to be like values that are really meaningful to me. We're not going to have time today to get into well, then how do you write the essay? Just because that's a whole separate thing. I'm going to give you a resource though at the end so that you can kind of see what the next steps are. But I wanted to give you this. This is what I call the topic test. And if you want to go through this on YouTube, you can just Google Jellyfish College Essay Guy, and there's like a whole walkthrough of this exercise. But it'll basically give you a sense of, do you have enough stuff to say about your topic that connects to different sides of you? So it's kind of a fun one. Check it out. That's one of the best ways to test your topic. Now, if you did the identities exercise and you're like, do I just pick one identity? You could. I've seen students, for example, write about just like my Greek identity, and it connects to X, Y, Z, and Q values. And here are different examples for each paragraph, and voila. But it could be, as this student did, that their overarching topic is identities. And what they did in their Jellyfish is actually naming the different identities first, and then writing what values does that connect to, each of those identities connect to. So it's kind of a variation on that. So after the session, if you've got some energy and time, I would recommend going ahead and testing a couple of your different things that you brainstormed. Or if you feel like, you know what, I don't feel like I brainstormed enough, go back. You can either watch the recording tomorrow when you get this, or again, I'll share with you a video at the end that has specific more exercise that you can kind of walk through and pause the YouTube video. Okay, so that's the montage structure, and that's broadly how it works. But some of you are watching this session and you're like, but Ethan, I have faced challenges and I do want to write about them. And I say to you, this part, the next part's for you. If you face challenges that you feel like have shaped you in really important ways, a first question to ask yourself is, and this is important enough that I actually want to like give you back my face. Hey, ask yourself, is this the best way to demonstrate my skills, qualities, values, and interests? Because sometimes, even though you've gone through a big situation, there could be a topic that allows you to talk about lots of different sides of yourself, i.e. a montage, and you can weave in the narrative, the challenges to that story. But if you're like, no, this is what I want to write about, I want to write about these challenges, then great. The structure that I would recommend, broadly speaking, is including in the first third of your essay, what were the challenges that you experienced, or what was the main challenge you experienced? And don't sleep on this next part, the effects. Sometimes students write essays and they only name the challenges and they assume that we're going to know what it meant. So like, my parents got divorced. What does that mean? Was in my case, when my parents got divorced, it meant that there was a lot of silence. And like, we didn't, as kids, know that it was happening. And then one day my dad was like, by the way, your mom and I are getting divorced. And I was like, what? So that's what it meant for me. And the effect, there were certain effects based on that. Our money went down because, anyway, it's a long story. But for other people, a divorce might have meant throwing plates and screaming. I'm not saying you need to get into all the details of like your parents' divorce. But my point here is that in order to differentiate your experience of whatever said challenge is from other people's, we need to know a little bit about the effects. But don't spend the whole essay telling us about the effects, because that's not going to get you into college. What readers are interested in is, what did you do about it? Based on these experiences, how did you feel? What did you need? And then based on what you needed, how did you get those needs met? So maybe you needed more stability or certainty, so you went and got a job. Or maybe you felt like you needed to support the family, so you took more care of your brothers and sisters. Or you needed, again, if you can think about what the needs were during that time and how you met those needs, that can be a really good segue into the middle of your essay, which is like, how did these challenges shape you and turn you into the person you are today? Because the third part is, okay, what did you learn from these experiences? And this is where those insights come in. And if you want to use that values list and focus on like 2 to 3 values that you gain, for example, I'll just use the example of my parents. You know what? I moved around a lot as a kid. That was a challenging situation. And I was very often the new kid. I went to 13 schools. What did I do about it? It forced me to, even though I was kind of introverted, to learn how to make friends fast. And what did I learn? I learned how to make friends fast. No, I learned to ask good questions. I think one of the effects was that I got really kind of annoyed by small talk quickly. So if you really knew me, you would know that like I avoid small talk mostly. And I really want to get in there with questions like, what is your relationship to belonging? And in what situations do you belong or not belong? Now, that can sometimes be intense for people. So I've also learned that I need to like back off. But I've also learned that I have a deep need for and desire for connection. So those are some examples. So if you're thinking about writing about this, I've got a whole exercise that you can use. It's called the feelings and needs exercise. And you can Google it. Just Google feelings and needs exercise. And it involves a series of questions. I've mentioned some of them: challenges, effects, feelings, needs, what I did, lessons, and values. And in about 15, maybe I would say, if you watch the YouTube video, pause it. It might take you 25 minutes to do a really good job. It'll help you map out and know if the challenges you've experienced might end up yielding some interesting content for a personal statement. But again, the question that I want to ask you, if you're thinking about, well, I have challenges, but I've also got this cool montage idea, ask yourself, which of these is going to allow you to best demonstrate the skills, qualities, values that you're going to bring with you to a college campus? And if you're not sure, try them both. Like, write a draft of both usually one will emerge as the leader, as the not clear winner, but like, oh, I'm kind of vibing with this one a little bit more. And then sometimes students will write that one for a couple of weeks and then realize, you know what, no, I think I'm going to try the other idea, but try them both. Here's an essay that was written based on this exercise. I'm not going to read the whole thing, again, for sake of time, and also I want to leave time for Q&A, but I wanted to share with you how this exercise can lead to an essay. This student experienced some challenges related to domestic abuse. His mother had a little, he had a little brother. He was undocumented. How did this impact him? His father was arrested. Money was not good. Money was tight. They didn't often reach out for help as a family because they were worried about disclosure of their undocumented status. He was even discouraged from meeting new people, and his grades went down. So how did he feel? Confused, lonely, disconnected, heartbroken. All these words, by the way, don't end up in the essay. This is just like his brainstorm. And then what did he need? He needed more order. Autonomy. Autonomy is like being self-governing, like being able to like do the things that you want to do, that need to do, not because necessarily someone else tells you to do them. He needed growth, opportunities for growth. He needed safety. So these are, again, not all of these words end up in the essay. This is just his thinking through what did these experiences lead him to needing. So what did he do about it? Took more responsibilities around the home, became his own teacher, found a way to like fix stuff like his shoes and fix his bike. Also got involved in school, got really good. His grades went back up, was the first student in school to pass AP Physics, started taking some leadership roles, sharing with others. Ultimately, he learned that he was proud of what he's done. But, there's a thing. I'm going to show you the end of the essay. I'm going to kind of give you the high level because I kind of just shared with you the story itself. What you'll notice in this essay, at 6 years old, he says, I stood locked away in the restroom. I held tightly to a tube of toothpaste because I'd been sent to brush my teeth to distract me from the commotion. Tube of toothpaste was in his essence objects as an object related to a challenge that he'd experienced. Regardless, I knew what was happening. My father was being put under arrest for domestic abuse. So he names the challenge there at the start, and then he names the effects. My brother and I shared the mental strain. He tells us what were the more effects. Money was tight. Mom worked 2 jobs, etc. And then, mom gets remarried, stepdad, but then stepdad has some issues with alcoholism. So more challenges. And then he discovers he's undocumented. I know, a lot of challenges. Avoided going on certain school trips. And here's where he says, I felt isolated and at times disillusioned. My grades started to slip. Notice he doesn't go on and on about different grades. He's just like 5 words. My grades slipped. My grades started to slip. Turning point. Over time, however, I grew determined to improve the quality of my life for my family and myself. So what did he do about it? Without a father figure to teach me the things a father could, I became my own teacher, learned how to fix a bike, to swim, etc. I became independent so that he didn't have to be a burden on his mom. Brought his grades up, passed some, got some leadership responsibilities, got involved in sports, extracurriculars. At the end, he says, I have yet to see the person that Fernando will become. In other words, that core value of family was really important to them. He says at the end, I'll do as much as I can from now on, not because I have to, which was the situation earlier in his life, but because I choose to. And what I love about this, there's some nice craft here. Short sentences. He's not using big words. He's just being intentional with his language because I choose to. So this is a great example of one of his core values was autonomy. Like I said, choosing what you do with your time. So this exercise, again, if you feel like you've got challenges, I strongly recommend the feelings and needs exercise. Map out challenges, effects, feelings, needs, what you did about it, what you learned, and maybe it's an essay. I welcome questions in the chat. I know I'm kind of moving quickly, but hey. Let me actually pause because I'm getting ready to give you like more resources and crowd your brain with a lot of stuff. But I want to actually pause to give you a chance to think of questions. So let me literally be quiet for like 15 seconds. Okay. So short recap. You need some stuff to write about, and you got to pick a structure. The exercises that I shared are some pretty good ones for brainstorming. But let me share one more. If you go to my YouTube channel and you type in 7 montage types. I'm literally just going to YouTube right now, college essay guy. There is, there we go. How to brainstorm 7 different ideas. So this is like a 27-minute video that I will share in the chat. And that's more brainstorming stuff. So if you're like, I still don't feel like I found my topic yet, do that video. Watch it tonight, tomorrow, whenever it is. There's a lot of good stuff there. You need some stuff to write about. Once you've done that, pick a structure. Do you feel like from those ideas, oh yeah, one of these could be like jellyfishing? Test them. Could you connect it to a bunch of different values? Use it to show different sides of yourself. Montage. If not, do you have a challenge? Usually you know if you have a challenge. Don't try to force those challenges like I got a bad grade, or, you know, sometimes students write about changing schools, which is a somewhat common topic. You know, I often encourage students to like brainstorm montage first. Here's why. I feel like if you get stuck on a challenge-based story, sometimes you leave behind some other really awesome, interesting parts of yourself that colleges would like to know about. So maybe try the montage first, even if you ultimately end up going with the narrative structure, the challenge-based. Carmen's asking, what if there's a specific question to answer? Yeah, give me the prompt, Carmen. If there's a particular prompt that you're answering for a particular school, I'd love to hear it. As far as prompts go for just generally, and by the way, I'm going to share more resources in just a minute. This is kind of like we're starting off Q&A. For the Common App prompts, the Common App, if you're not familiar with it, is the platform that you'll use to apply to lots of private schools in the United States. And there are 7 different prompts to choose from. And I find that it's not the best place to find your ideas. So the exercise that I shared in that YouTube video, I find would be a more interesting way to generate stuff to write about. Because ultimately, those prompts are wide open, they're open-ended, and prompt 7 says topic of your choice. So you can write about whatever you want. So I would encourage you to brainstorm lots of stuff to write about. Start to write your essay and then go, okay, which of these prompts works best for me? So write your essay first and then pick a prompt. In my experience, talking to lots of admission officers, they don't care as much about the prompt for your personal statement. And your personal statement is this 650-word essay that you're writing that will go to most of the schools that you apply to. Now, we're not talking about it today, but there are separate essays that you'll write called supplemental essays that are particular to each school. It's a whole separate session. I've got resources for it, but hang on. And for those, the prompt is real important. If they ask, why do you want to attend our college? You need to answer, why would you want to attend the college? You got to use lots of specifics. But when it comes to your personal statement, I find that it's more useful to brainstorm content with great exercises first, and then just pick whichever prompt makes the most sense. Okay. Let me share with you some more resources, and then we'll get back into Q&A. Here we go. And let's do this. I'm going to, I think, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind, I would love if you would share some of these links as I'm talking about them. So I'm going to just give you the presentation slides. I mean, they're quickly Googleable. But all right, first, let's start with some resources for counselors. Let me share my screen again. Okay. So the first one is our resource hub for counselors. So if I search resource hub, it comes up. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Here we go. Okay, this is especially useful for public and charter school counselors, but I think it's useful for other counselors as well. But what it has on this hub is you've got things like essential college counseling books and resources. You've got templates for emailing your students. You know, for example, let's say it's August, as it is right now, and you are wanting to email your 11th graders. If you click August 11th, you've got content that you can just copy and paste into your emails for students. So if you're trying to think about what should my students be thinking about right now, we've got a whole Google Drive folder organized by month and by grade, and it's all free. Some other things that you'll find on this hub, we've got social media templates, which is like if you're trying to like get students hyped about something, or you want to create a flyer, you just click into these templates and you basically just put in your organization, and boom. And by organization, if you're a nonprofit or if you're a school, and just enter it, save you some time. If you don't have a school profile, there's a guide to creating a school profile. We've got some good teacher recommendation request forms if you want to compare them against the one that you already use. Some student questionnaires, like how to get to know students fast. I'm not going to name all these. We've got a college admissions timeline, resources on developing a great college list. Some of the exercises that I mentioned today, like the feelings and needs exercise, the values exercise. Sometimes students need the basics, like what is the Common App? Or what's the Coalition app or the Common Black app? Or, what is how did the UCs differ from the, from the Texas schools so we've got guides to all those in here. We've got a really comprehensive paying for college guide, which I'll just walk through. Actually, let's see, paying for, here, let me show you this. It's a really comprehensive guide with, it says 4 steps. It's, it's pretty detailed for how to get money for college. So I don't want to overwhelm you, but there's more as you scroll down. Guides to scholarship essays, interviews, resumes, pretty much all the things. Whoops. I wanted to hit back on, this is what I'm looking at. We also, this is kind of a new thing. We created a family handbook that you can edit and share with your families. So if you're a school that you don't have time to create a big handbook describing the whole admission process, you can basically take this one. And if you click this little template here and you watch this video, it'll show you how you can put your logo right here on this guide. And it essentially walks you through, here, I'll just share this in the chat real quick. Someone's asking me, is this on your website? It is, it's maybe hard to find. But essentially it'll talk about things like college rankings, and it'll talk about, by the way, if you disagree with any of this advice, feel free to edit it, because you can, it's editable. You just go to file and you go to make a copy. The only thing we ask is that you keep the college essay guy logo on it as like a little hat tip to thank the folks who created it, which was Andy, Erica, and a few other folks on our team. So it's pretty comprehensive and we're pretty excited about it. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. What do I put in the activities list? What about teacher recs? And you can, again, tweak it for your purposes. For students, if you want more next steps on the personal statement, free guide, just go to the free guide to the personal statement. And here it is. You've got basically a walkthrough of some of the exercises that I've talked about, sort of like a walkthrough of what to do, and then the next steps. And you can find that here. I'll put this in the chat as well. Oh, Ashley's doing it. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you. And then we've also got a Discord group. I'm not going to click this one because it's going to open up Discord. But if you are on Discord, we've got 3,000 other students who are on it. Jump in there. You can geek out on college essays. You can find a writing partner. You can just vent if you want to vent. We have daily chats and all the things. And if you're a parent watching this, again, that family handbook, I think it's going to be pretty useful. It's got the timeline. It's got a lot of things that I think are pretty important. We also have a parent community, if you're interested. This is actually, and it's free for the next week. And then we have pay what you can spots available. But essentially, it's a place where you can, get your questions answered. You probably already have a great school counselor. Definitely use them as a resource. But some of the things that we're talking about in these sessions are deep dives into things like demonstrated interest. And, how do you decide on early action, early decision? This is not meant to replace your college counselor. It's meant to be in addition to, just another place to kind of get some questions answered. And we've got some pretty cool folks in there. Let me scroll down. We've got Loren and Morgan and Jay and Tom and yours truly doing essay sessions in there. So we got a link to that. We welcome you. And we're doing sessions there tomorrow and Friday. And then we've got all the social media. You know about that. Instagram, YouTube. Smash that like button. All the things. So that's the session. Let's go to questions. Okay. Can you speak to writing about sports if it includes a challenge without being cliche? Tell me more, Brady. We've got a few minutes left. Tell me more about how you do that, because those sound like two difficult things to write about. Challenges related to sports. But if you are considering writing about sports, I would say do a Jellyfish. Puts the sport. Name values that we don't expect. Do 2 brainstorms. Do the cliche sports essay. What is everybody else going to talk about? And then do the one that you're actually going to write with values that we wouldn't expect. That's my quick advice on that, because you'll raise the likelihood that you're covering content that hasn't been covered in every other sports essay. Can you share the last essay? I want to read that last sentence again. Yeah, if you Google, I'll just do it real quick. What had to be done? College essay guy. A lot of these are to be found on the website. Actually, you know what? Actually, I already did it. Never mind. You're so lovely and real. Oh, thanks, Julie. That's really beautiful. Thanks for you to say that. Could you please revise my draft? Yes. So there's a link to do that. I won't be revising it personally, but we do have folks that will help you with that. And we have free options available too, if you're a low-income student. What if you write about a class you've been struggling with for years? I would recommend a new topic. All right, here's Carmen's prompt. How does your faith attribute to your college choice? And the second is, how can you contribute to the college's mission? Okay, so these seem to be supplemental essays. In other words, I'm guessing, Carmen, you can tell me if it's true. I'm guessing you're still going to have a personal statement. And everything that I've been talking about relates to your personal statement. So these kind of supplemental, more specific questions, that's for a whole other session. And I don't have time to get into those right now. But here's what I will say is we have a whole bunch of guides for a bunch of different schools. And I don't know if we're going to have the specific school you're looking for. But if you look at these supplemental essay guides, so these are school-specific crash courses. So if, for example, you are applying to, let's say, I don't know, Brown, you click on Brown and you'll see, make sure that it says 2022, 2023. That lets you know that it's this year. If it says 21, 22, that means it's still last year's because they haven't released them. Thanks, MIT. But they hopefully will soon. And we'll update. As soon as it says 22, 23, that's the updated one. And you'll find the prompts. You'll find examples for each one and a little step-by-step walkthrough with specific and usually pretty comprehensive resources for writing whatever school you're looking for. So, Carmen, I'm gonna refer you there in hopes that the essays that you're working on are some of the schools. And the schools that we did are not like based on rankings. They're just based on the schools that students Google the most often. Overcoming an injury and the isolation from my team while doing so. I would recommend other topics, Brady, just because it's in those top 3 most common topics. Do you have a recommended timeline for drafts and revisions for the personal statement and supplemental essays for early action? Yeah, I mean, I would say as much as you can, Samantha. See if you can finish by the, in the next 6 weeks, like be done by October, because by October 1st, because I think that'll give you a good shot at like having time to make sure if you need to revise or make any big changes, then you'll be able to. But I would say try and be done, like, if possible, a month before your deadline. I know some of you watching this, especially the recording, are going to be like, what? No way. But do your best to be done early because stuff happens. Or you show it to your counselor a week before the deadline and they're like, oh, you need another topic. And so give yourself some time to actually, choose another topic if you need to switch. I don't see any other questions at the moment. So I am going to sign off. And also, we're almost at the perfect 1 hour mark. So thanks, y'all, for being here. Feel free to engage with more of the resources or come to a future session. I'd love to see you. We're here at CEG to support you. And if you've got questions, you can just feel free to email us, reach us through the website. All right. Much love. Talk to you soon.